Got an assessment centre coming up and got some questions. Here are the 10 most common questions answered about assessment centres. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English here with another video to help you get hired. I've been helping people prepare for assessment centres for world famous companies for now 10 years. And I always get asked the same questions. So in this video, I'm going to answer the 10 most common questions that I get asked about assessment centres to give you a little bit of peace of mind. And I'll be finishing off by explaining what's the best way for you to prepare by yourself, which is probably where you find yourself as you're watching this video. Let's get started. Question number 1, what actually happens in an assessment centre? So an assessment centre is generally a group of people come together and are assessed. You're going to do some group exercises, some individual exercises, a little bit of schmoozing as well. So you tend to have a presentation at the start of the day by the company. These tend to be targeted at graduates. Professionals don't tend to have to go through assessment centres. You might have a meet and greet portion of the day where you get to meet other graduates or managers or directors. And then in between that, you'll have 2 or 3 different exercises which are assessed, hence the assessment centre. Question number 2, what exercises could I get in an assessment centre? Now, I've prepared candidates for hundreds of different assessment centres at different companies. And what I noticed is this all basically boils down to 7 different exercises. Doesn't matter what the company, what you're going to do, it's all going to come down to these 7 exercises. That is an online test, a group discussion, a written exercise, a case study, a role play, a final interview or a presentation. You might be saying, oh, but I'm applying to be a software engineer and I have to do pairs coding. I just kind of count that as a case study, like an individualized exercise that you have to solve by yourself. A presentation is where you're speaking out loud, a group discussion is where you're speaking with other people, a role play is where you're simulating a situation with somebody else, generally in a sales or business development background. Online testing is just retesting, a final interview is just another interview. You get the idea. Pretty much every assessment centre I've come across comes down to those 7 exercises. Question number 3, what's the best way to prepare by yourself? Now, this is a really important question at the end, which is by yourself. If you get an assessment centre, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have loads of people who you can practice with. Maybe you do. Maybe you're watching this and you're at university. I highly recommend, if you can, just go to your career service and say, hey, is it possible that you could put on a mock assessment centre or a mock group discussion? The only thing that you can't really prepare for by yourself, but I will show you how, is a group discussion. Why? Because you need other people, but you've just got to make do with what you have. And what I tend to suggest when people work with me one-to-one is I say, let's do case studies, written exercises, presentations, let's make sure our online tests are on point, but most importantly, let's just do our homework. So we want to know what to expect to then prepare for what is going to come. We don't want to spend all our time preparing for everything that could happen, because what's going to end up is that we're going to be really shallow in our prep. So though we're wide, we're kind of trying to prepare for 7 different things, when the chances are you're only going to get 2 or 3 of those types of exercises. Question number 4, what happens in a group discussion? Most people are scared of group discussions. If you're watching this and you've got an assessment centre coming up, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen in a group discussion? There's really nothing to worry about. So you're going to have 4 to 6 people, you're all going to have the same material and potentially material which is individualised. All group discussions kind of go like this. Company A has problem B. Here's solution 1 to 6. Each person gets a different solution. Maybe in some exercises everybody gets all the solutions and you then discuss that material. That's pretty much what happened. What are people scared of? Well, first of all, they don't really know what to do. So the most popular thing that people tend to pick up on YouTube from a video that I don't know where it is that they should be a timekeeper. They're like, how can I be really useful in this group discussion? Contribute. Use the material and contribute to discussion. That's how you're useful. And if you don't speak, you're not going to pass. And then you might come back and say, well, I'm a bit introverted, I'm a bit shy, I don't really like talking to people. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that's tough. So if you can, what I tend to say to people like that is, right, well, maybe you need to start socializing yourself now, go to meetups, start doing stuff with people, even if it's online. You've got to get over that. It's just one of those things of saying, well, I really want to be a chef, but I don't like touching raw food. it's not going to work, is it? You're going to have to find a different job. So if this is something that you want to do, you're going to have to adjust. What if somebody speaks too much? We'll just interrupt them. What if people don't speak enough? We'll bring them into the conversation. There is loads more that I can and do say about group discussions in our Acing the Assessment Centre bundle. But for now, group discussions are nothing to be afraid of. And the more case studies you do, the more problems you solve, the more presentations you give, the better that you will become at group discussions. Because essentially the premise is very simple, which is, here's a problem, solve that problem, present that information in a group. Question number 5, what should I wear? Always business dress. Now this is going to be slightly controversial, and I'll be interested to see what people have to say in the comments if you have a comment about this. So I always tend to say, particularly if this is face-to-face, be comfortable. So guys, wear a suit, wear some nice fitting shoes, just be comfortable. Assessment centres are really long and they're quite emotionally, mentally and physically draining, particularly if you've never been to an assessment centre before. So just make sure you really kind of take the time to just pick stuff which is comfortable for you. Of course, be smart. Now, 80% of the clients that work with me are women, young women between the ages of about 18 to 26. And they're like, well, what should I wear? And I always say, wear flats, wear minimal makeup, and wear stuff where you feel comfortable and you can move around in that all day. Minimal jewellery as well. If you do have maybe you have tattoos, I tend to say, look, just if you're going in a corporate environment, if you can, just wear long sleeves. Look, I haven't got an opinion about tattoos. You might say, well, people can't discriminate against me because of my tattoos, but they might. So don't give them an opportunity to do that. Your tattoos do not define who you are or your ability to do a job, but you have to be aware that we live in a world where some people do have some kind of negative bias towards that. So to not adjust to that is just foolish on your part. So yes, business dress, but mainly comfortable. If it's a virtual assessment centre, then business on top, party below. It's what I tend to say, but just be careful that your camera is off when you sort of stand up and say you're, in your pyjamas, or perhaps like me, just walking around in your boxers. I do have full clothing underneath this video, just to let you know. Question number 6, what's the difference between a face-to-face assessment centre and a virtual assessment centre? Not a lot, to be honest. Both of them have their pros and cons. I think face-to-face, there are better human interactions which are derived from face-to-face. Digital, for me, cannot really encapsulate everything that you get from meeting people face-to-face, observing their body language, interacting in a group setting. And I think face-to-face assessment centres are really great experiences to go through. Companies spend a lot of money and put a lot of time into breaks, lunch, presentations, meeting the graduates, meeting managers, those kind of vicarious conversations. You get to meet your competitors, and it's important to recognise that yes, they are your competitors, but they're probably not. Particularly if you're going for a large company, you might meet somebody who's applying for, say you went for PwC, for an audit graduate programme, you might meet someone who's going for tax and an intern and a summer placement, and someone who's doing consulting, and this person's doing this. They're not really competing with you because they're applying for different jobs. So that's another thing to recognise. Of course, the more technically specific the job, the more likely that you're directly competing with somebody. The only thing about face-to-face is that you've always kind of got to be on. You're like, hi, how are you? How are you doing? I'm great, I'm having a great time. And you're like, oh my God. You've got to do that for like 6 or 7 hours. Plus you've got to travel. A little word of advice. This is something that's come from a bad experience that a client had years ago, where they travelled to Leeds, they had their ticket booked, it was just 3 hours on the train, there was snow the night before, they couldn't make the assessment centre, and they were basically told, look, you failed, you should have made arrangements so that you could be here on time. Harsh, but true. So what I always say to people is, if you plan out how far away the assessment centre is, if it's longer than an hour, just go and stay at a hotel nearby. Number one, it's just going to make you feel so much more relaxed, and that's really important. Number two, you adjust for the fact, particularly in the UK, for our awful public transport system. And the other thing as well is that you're not having to sort of figure out what to do, having a flap, forgetting stuff. You can get everything ready the day before. Go and stay at like a cheap hotel, cost you like £60, £70, is dead worth it for the peace of mind. Now what about virtual? Well, virtual has numerous benefits because you're at home, you're in your place of safety, your place of comfort, you're like, this feels really cool to me. I feel all right. Business on top, party down below, and all that kind of stuff. I think sometimes people can be a little bit lazy or have a false sense of confidence because they're at home. The other thing is, in a group, you can't, just have a conversation with only one person can speak at the same time. That can be a little bit annoying. If somebody is, just talking and talking, you can do a really sneaky trick, which is just like wave your hand in front of the camera. Anything that kind of breaks just someone's pattern of concentration as they're talking, you'll just have a natural pause. So yeah, that's kind of the difference. In terms of what actually happens, like the exercises, maybe the, kind of soft, high-touch events, meeting people, that doesn't really change, to be honest with you. Question number 7, what's the difference between a first round and a final interview? So kind of at a high level, a first round interview is just a sort of screener. I tend to think of them as HR screeners. A couple of motivational questions, a couple of competency questions, probably done via video, probably analysed with an algorithm. A person probably doesn't watch your first round interview these days, on balance, particularly for big companies. When it comes to a final interview, the interviewer is kind of looking for different stuff. Well, if you get to an assessment centre, you're already good enough to do the job. Only about 5% of people reach assessment centres. That's my experience, that's my observation. I can't find those statistics anywhere because every company is different and every assessment centre is different. When you get there, you're good enough to do the job. So it's like, are you a good fit? Do you technically understand the role? Do you have a good level of commercial awareness and business acumen? These are like deeper questions, and also you're going to be speaking to a real person. It might be via video, but it's going to be a real person. You're going to have a real conversation. You might go off topic. It's more of an unstructured interview. Again, if you want to know more about final interviews, check out the link in the description where I give you access to the Acing Assessment Centre bundle, which talks all about that. Question 8, is the whole day assessed? This is a great question because it's like, well, I've got these free exercises, but also I'm meeting people all the time, and are they assessing me? And is someone there with a little checkboard when I come out the toilet going, looks sad, -5 points? No, you're not being assessed all day because also people don't care that much, right, about you, but you are always being observed. And one thing I always tend to say to people when they're going to assessment centres is be the person who is nice, who is kind, who is interested, who is interesting, who goes out of their way to speak to as many people as possible. Something I truly believe is that what you know is important, but who you know is also really important. If you go to a company's office and you make sure that you're nice to the receptionist and you say hello to the cleaner and you're just kind and cordial to all those that you meet, as opposed to just being, a butt kisser who's just trying to be really nice to the directors or the managers, yeah, please, like they haven't seen that before, right? If it comes down to it, and say they're really struggling to make a choice between you and Steve, they might say, oh, does anybody remember Mike? And they'll be like, oh yeah, he was really nice to me. That kind of stuff does make a difference. Not everything is assessed, but just be on your best behaviour. Particularly face-to-face, that can be, the emotional and mentally draining part of it. But I always say, like, look, just, slip off to the toilet, have a little cry in the bathroom stall, punch a hole through, don't punch a hole through the wall, but just let it out and be like, oh, and then you get back and say, hi, how are you doing? Do something like that. Question number 9, what should I do the day before an assessment centre? The single best thing that you can do to prepare, because I implement quite a lot of kind of sports coaching, tactics and strategies and the work that I do with clients and the courses that I have, is get a good night's sleep. That is the best thing that you can do because you're nervous, you're anxious. You being able to get, however much, 6 to 8 hours of sleep the night before is huge. So you want to optimize to relax. You don't want to be up until 3 in the morning practicing for your interview or going out and having a drink with, your friends. You just want to kind of relax. Maybe that's having a nice hot bath, having, nice something to eat, give someone a little squeeze, whatever that is. But just make sure that you optimize for a good night's sleep. So then when you wake up in the day, everything's set out. Try to minimize what I call decision fatigue. So sometimes people are like, well, first I'm going to do this and this, and then I'm going to do it. I'm like, you should do nothing This is one of the most important days of your life up until this point, so you want to minimize the number of decisions that you make. You know, have your clothes set out, know what you're going to eat for breakfast, you know, treat yourself, make that day really easy for you, spend a little bit of extra money, but just so that you're really fresh and mentally agile when you get to the assessment center. And question 10, I haven't got an assessment center, when should I start preparing? I always say that you can start doing case studies as soon as possible, really. Practicing presentations, that's something that we've done for any of you who've watched my Tell Me About Yourself video. We're always practicing presenting ourselves, disseminating information. These are all really important things to do. So when should you start practicing? As soon as possible. You know, if you've got an assessment center, if you're not prepared, it's not that it's too late, but it's still pretty late, right? If you're getting to, say you were going to be, you know, running in a marathon, you don't go the week before and go, I should probably do some running now. You would have done that. So treat it the same way. Also, I feel like it has the psychological benefit of kind of, if you've never had an assessment center, you're already kind of programming your mind for the thing that you know that you're going to do. So you're not going into applications, online tests, interviews, whatever, thinking, oh, what if it doesn't work? Be like, preparing for the last round. I'm preparing for the assessment center. I'm gonna make it. That's really an important thing for you to do psychologically, because finding a job, a really good job in particular, is very much a mental game. The rest is all just kind of like the processes that you need to go through and all those other sorts of things I've covered in different videos. If you want more help, then please feel free to check out the Acing Assessment Centers bundle course down below. It's got free case studies, walkthrough, 14 videos, tons of handouts. I go through all the 7 exercises. I've designed it because there was no other course like it, and it's been really popular with people who've bought it. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Please make sure to hit like, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Welcome to our new office, our new background. There's been a bit of a break because I now have a new dog. If you want the dog in the video, drop us a comment down below. Random way to segue. See you later. Bye.